Okay, so here is your review for Module 12, Lesson 4. We're talking about using probability to make predictions. To be honest with you, this is exactly like what we did when we used percentages to find wholes and parts. So you're taking what we learned with percentages and now you are putting it with probabilities. Right, so you also did this in lesson 12 where we talked about the defective brakes on bicycles and you made predictions of how many bicycles would have defective brakes. We're just kind of taking it a step further. Now, I do know some of the problems in your homework today ask you to find how many times it will or will not do something. Remember, sometimes they give you the information for it will happen this many times and they want to know how many times it will not happen. So make sure you're reading carefully because sometimes what that means is you're going to have to use the probability, find your number, and then work in reverse. So if it says it's going to happen, 10 out of 20 times, how many times will it happen out of 40? Well, then it would happen 20 times out of 40. But if they ask you how many times will it not happen, you have to take that answer and subtract it from the 40, right? So remember, read carefully. Second of all, make sure you guys are doing what I need you to do, please. I really appreciate that. When I'm gone, you guys are doing a great job for the sub and doing what you know you need to do, staying on task, getting your stuff done. And remember, your Module 12 workbooks are due at the end of class, so make sure you're using your time wisely to get them done and turned in. All right, so here we go. I'm going to go over an example with you here where we have this bowler who knocks down at least 6 pins 70% of the time. Out of 200 rolls, make a prediction of how many times he will knock down at least 6 pins. So we want to make a prediction of how many times he will knock down at least 6 pins. In this case, it's really important to find those important numbers. So the fact that he knocks down 6 pins, that number isn't important because we're not talking about, yes, we're talking about how many pins he knocks down, but we're not saying he knocks down 6 out of 10. We're just saying that he knocks down that many, but he knocks down that many 70% of the time. So when he's bowling, think of what 70% means. 70% means 70 times out of, and we know percent means 100, right? So that means 70 times out of 100, he's going to knock down at least 6 pins. That 6 doesn't matter. It's just how many pins he knocks down. So we want to know out of 200 rolls, how many times will he knock down at least 6 pins? So it's just the fact that we're looking for he'll knock down that many pins. All right, the 6 is not important. So in this case, we could set it up as a proportion. We know he knocks down 70 out of every 100 tries. Or, well, 70 times he'll knock down the 6 pins out of 100 tries. So if it's 200 attempts, how many times would that be? We can use our cross multiplication and know that 70 times 200 is equal to 7 times 2 is 14. Add your 3 zeros, so 14,000. And then we know that 100 times x has to equal 14,000. Divide both sides by 100. And we get that x is equal to, cross out, cancel the zeros, 140. Right? So in this case, we know that when he's bowling, if 70 times out of 100 he can knock down those 6 pins, then out of 200 he should knock down 6 pins 140 times. Right? So this isn't pins. We're not trying to find out how many pins he's knocking down. We're trying to figure out how many times he'll knock down that many pins. Right? So here we set it up as a proportion. We could also set it up as an equation. So remember with your equation, it's your percent times your whole will give you your part. In this case, our percent is 70% times our whole. Now, our whole in this case is the total number of times that he is going to attempt to knock down the pins, which is 200, and that's going to give us our answer. However, we know that we have to change 70% to a decimal. right? And then if I multiply these, okay, so I do 7 times 2, again, is 14, and I add the 0, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then I move the decimal over twice, I'm sorry, to the left. I don't know why I put 3 times on there. 1, 2, because there's 1, 2 places after decimal. So 140 is equal to x. So again, no matter which way you do it, it comes out exactly the same. You just have to put your pieces in the right place. So remember, your percentage is always out of 100, and that's really going to help you out. I will give you a little heads up. So the first problem that you work on in your workbook talks about a family that's going on vacation, and they're going for 14 days. And it says that it rains on average 10 of those days. And they only want it to rain 7 or less days. Okay, so they want to know how many days they're going to have without rain. So days without rain. And I'm sorry, they don't want it to rain 7 days. They want 7 days without rain, at least. So since they're looking for how many days they need without rain, and we are given how many days it does rain, this is that example that I gave you at the beginning. You're going to have to take your answer and do some subtraction. You also have to know that April has 30 days. So out of those 30 days, so 30 is our total, it's going to rain 10, which we know is equal to 1/3. So 1 out of every 3 days, it's going to rain. And we can use that as a proportion and say, okay, well, if it rains 1 out of every 3 days and they're going on vacation for 14 days, we should be able to figure out how many days it's going to rain. You also need to think, here, 3 doesn't go into 14 nicely, so I'm going to get a decimal. So in this case, whatever my decimal is, so let's say that it was 1 and, 4, 5, 6. You have to make this a second day, because that means it's going to rain one day and then part of another. So that means they're going to have 2 rainy days. Okay, that isn't the actual answer though, just so you know. So then in this case, this is going to tell you the number of rainy days. And you need to know how many not rainy days there are going to be. So again, you're going to have to do some subtraction. All right. So that is your short little review for the beginning of class. Again, use your time wisely, ask questions, work with your group. When you're in independent work, you're working on your own. Almost like it's a test. I want to see what you know. Do your best, get your stuff done. Remember, we have a review and a quiz on Tuesday. And if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to shoot me an email, today or over the weekend or anything like that. And come in on Monday if you still have some questions, or if you want to take a look at your workbook and see how you did. Absolutely come on in, all right? Again, thank you guys for being so good for the sub. I know that I can expect great things from you guys, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.